when people die, bodies decompose unless they're preserved like the mummies of Egypt were. But what if I told you that there's an exception to this rule, and that the earth has its own natural way of preserving bodies, better than the mummies of Egypt were preserved? I'm talking about bog bodies, corpses that were preserved in peat bogs. Many people might ask why this information pertains to them. Well, my friends, if you're ever thinking about going on the show Jeopardy! This information could be the difference between you winning $1 million or not. And even if you're not planning on going on a famous TV game show, this information could be a filler for a conversation between you and your friends, or on a first date that's not going so well. I first heard about bog bodies when I was scrolling through Facebook, and as a nursing major, anything with the word bodies or is something biologically related sparks my interest, so I read that first article and immediately set out on my search on the internet for some more information. Some of the websites that I used were pbs.org, which is an educational information website, Archaeology Archives, which is a website that discusses the science behind the preservation of bog bodies, and historicmysteries.net, which examines many different historic topics, including this one. First, I'm going to explore what bog bodies are, and then I'm going to describe how they're preserved, and finally, I'm going to examine some of the more famous bog bodies that have been discovered. Corpses found in peat bogs are known as bog bodies and have led to a better understanding of what life was like thousands of years ago. So what are bog bodies exactly? According to historicmysteries.net, bog bodies are mummified corpses that are found in peat bogs of Celtic northern Europe and occasionally in Florida. These bogs were basically a mass graveyard for the dumping of bodies between the BC era lasting all the way up into the medieval era. Bog bodies are generally found with wounds that indicate that they suffered a violent death, including hanging or decapitation, and occasionally many stab wounds. What makes bog bodies so interesting, in my opinion, is the fact that they're so well preserved. They are known to be found wearing the same clothes, hairstyles, and facial expressions that they had when they died, and they're really just beautifully preserved. Additionally, many of these bodies have their insides are still intact, and the food contents in their stomach are preserved, and so this allows researchers to gain a better understanding of what life was like during the time that these people were alive and how they died. Bog bodies are usually found when peat bogs are being drained of their contents in order to collect the peat moss. It's unclear how many bog bodies have been found and just undocumented. However, there's about 1,000 bog bodies that have been documented. So now that you know what a bog body is, let's examine how peat bogs preserve bog bodies. So peat bogs are the reason behind their preservation, and Archaeology Archive says that bogs form when moss collects on low-lying patches of land and the water collects underneath it, and the moss on top creates a barrier for oxygen and nutrients so they can't permeate, and these oxygen and nutrients are vital to the growth of bacteria and decomposing substances that decompose organic materials such as bodies. So eventually a bog creates its own ecosystem and its own environment and chemicals that are great for preserving organic materials such as bodies. HistoricMysteries.net says that peat bogs are acidic, and the acidity of bogs can vary. This is seen in Tollin Man, whose whole body was preserved except for his hand, which was just bones. And this indicates there was a large pH variation in just such a small area. So now that you know how bog bodies are made, let's take a look at some of the famous bog bodies that have been found. There's a number of highly studied bog bodies that are introduced by PBS.org. First off, there's Grabali Man. His body was found in Denmark, and his estimated date of death was between 100 BC and AD 100. He died by his throat being slit, and from the contents of his stomach, it's known that he ate a soup laced with a hallucinogenic fungus, and so researchers guess that this was possibly for a sacrificial ritual. Grabali Man is the most X-rayed and analyzed corpse in the world. Another famous bog body is Eid Girl. She was found in the Netherlands and is estimated to have died between 100 BC and AD 50, around the same time that Grabali Man was found. And she was estimated to have died around the age of 16. Eid Girl is part of a small percentage of children that are found in peat bogs, and she was strangled and stabbed to death, and was possibly a sacrifice due to her awkward appearance and spine curvature due to scoliosis. And the hair on her head was well and fully preserved. However, half of it was cut off on her head, and the cause of this is not known. However, there have been many other bog bodies found with the same thing that have happened to them. The most famous bog body that I want to share with you is Meanie Braden Woman. She was found in Ireland and is estimated to have died between 1500 and 1600, and in her late 20s or early 30s. She is separated from the bog bodies of the Iron Age because she was found wearing a woolen cloak. Meanie Braden's Woman grave is likely to be unconsecrated, and she is guessed to have either been a victim of murder or suicide, but she has no wounds to indicate a cause of death, so obviously the cause of death is unknown. So now that you know what a bog body is, how they're preserved, and some of the more famous bog bodies, it's clear that they're truly a wonder of nature. Corpses found in peat bogs are known as bog bodies and have led to a better understanding of what life was like thousands of years ago. So now that you know this information, when you get your big break on Jeopardy, or need a topic to talk about with friends or on a first date, you're armed with some information that could earn you fat cash or save your face in an awkward silent situation. Thank you.